Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. I'm your host SM Hali, presenting the program Defense and Diplomacy. The other day, Prime Minister of Pakistan, with his political allies and the senior members of the armed forces, reviewed the recommendations of the Parliamentary Committee on National Defense regarding the rules of engagement with the US and NATO. And they have reportedly approved of it, but it now waits formal review by the Parliament itself. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton, the Secretary of State of USA, has made certain overtures for improving the relations with Pakistan. But what are the ground realities? To examine them, we are honored to have in our studio today Simbal Khan, who is Director at the Institute of Strategic Studies and a Senior Analyst. Welcome. And we have with us Major Raja Mujtaba, who is also a Senior Analyst and renowned author of the website Opinion Maker. Simbal, how you look at these developments?
I think as far as the review at the Prime Minister's level and of course with the Defense Committee is concerned, that is awaited. I think it just comes a little before the parliamentary committees finally sanctioning the reset in our relationship that was under review for the past 3.5-4 months after the Salala attacks. So I think this is basically giving it a final go-ahead and looking at it, having a review finally on that. The broad contours, obviously the finer print we will be able to see once it is announced by the Parliament itself, Parliamentary Committee itself. But I think the broad contours of that review and the reset are getting to be known around, and people have been talking about it.
Exactly, but it's premature to really comment on them until we see them in black and white.
Exactly,
but the point I wanted to make, Simbal, was what are the ground realities?
The ground realities as far as our bilateral relations with the US is concerned, I think we have to remember there were 2-3 points which are very valid that we have to think about. First is, of course, the issue of the NATO transit, which is going to be a very fundamental part of a lot of changes, a lot of discussion that has taken place is that we must remember that the US is right now positioning itself for a withdrawal of most of its combat troops. Some sources are saying that this withdrawal is being moved ahead of even the 2014 date to 2013, that most of the combat troops have to leave. And it's not just the US, most of the NATO countries are going to match up the date also and try to move most of their hardware, military hardware and troops out of Afghanistan. That would require Pakistan's cooperation in a very, very significant way. They have been debating and they have been discussing the northern distribution network, which basically are the routes, 3 or 4 routes out of Central Asia into Russia and onwards to Europe, which is a very long route. I think today in the newspaper we've heard that they have gotten the Russians to agree to provide transit facilities at another airport somewhere in close to the Volga River. There is a Russian airport which is going to be made available to the NATO specifically for this purpose of transit out of Afghanistan. But I think the value of the Pakistan route remains high. We've just recently seen the visit of the German defense minister. I think the French and the Swedish were here about 2 days ago, and even the British have been making those overtures. The European NATO countries are very keen to see the restart of the NATO transit because they also want to position themselves to get their troops safely out of Afghanistan.
Right. So, Major Saab, Simbal Khan just mentioned about the ground realities being interrelated with the extrication of the international troops from Afghanistan. And she hinted, and I suppose it's in the air, that it could even occur earlier than 2014. But the current events which have taken place in Afghanistan, for example, the assassination of 15 family members and by a US soldier and so on, these complicate matters. In fact, there have been a very, very serious protest rally asking the Americans to quit as soon as possible.
You see, we all plan, but there's a course of nature which takes place, you know.
Man proposes, God disposes.
And today what Americans have done for themselves, the American arrogance is going to lick the dust. It has virtually come to that now. You see, first of all, they were here with a very arrogant mind, with very dominating sort of a posture, and they want to dominate everything and give you a very sort of a wild signal on 9/11 Are you with us or are you with the terrorists? If you don't, then we'll bomb you out into the Stone Age, you know. So that sort of messages were coming. Now, America is one country which will listen to you if you have your feet firmly on the ground. If you talk to them with the light feet or with the something trying to appease them and please them, they're going to kick you. So since Salala, a definite change has come in the American attitude towards Pakistan. They tried all their means of coercion and arm twisting and things like that, but they even threatened to impose economic sanctions. Well, we have been living through economic sanctions. If they do, it will be nothing new to us. And today they need us more than before, even to withdraw. To enter Afghanistan was one point, and extrication is much more complicated. They have to withdraw in a manner that they leave Afghanistan as per their desired thinking, whatever they have. And that cannot be possible unless Pakistan comes on board.
Right. Let me come back to Simbal. Afghanistan is your forte, and you've been following it very closely. If you recall, in 2001, just after 9/11, when the Americans were contemplating an attack, the Taliban then were talking about negotiations. They were even willing to let Mr. Osama go to a neutral Islamic country and saying that you just present the evidence you have against him being involved in 9/11 and he's yours. But the Americans, as Major Saab just said, in their arrogance, they conducted the Operation Enduring Freedom, or whatever name they gave. And now, after that, to quote Shakespeare, let loose the dogs of war and cry havoc, all hell has broken loose. But now they are back to the negotiating table. How do you look at that?
Yeah, I think there wasn't, as you have just said, that after 9/11, enough time wasn't given to negotiations with the Taliban to deal with the whole issue of Al-Qaeda at that point, or extrication of Al-Qaeda out of Afghanistan. I think Pakistan has a very, very kind of a legitimate position on that. We've had that position after 9/11, that there is no military solution to the issue, that Afghanistan has to be seen from an issue of, basically keeping the whole history of Afghan problem in mind, seen from the light of a conflict resolution, that war will never be the answer to the whole issue. And I think Pakistan's position has been vindicated after 10 years. We have consistently maintained that. We've had to face a kind of international backlash over this issue, because Pakistan has been consistently saying, although we have supported the US, we have supported the NATO countries and the international community on this war inside Afghanistan, and we've tried to stabilize Afghanistan, but at the same time, at every level, we have continued to say that there is no military solution to the problem of Afghanistan, and there is no military solution to the problem of the Taliban also, or the war with the Taliban. And Taliban, like many other political actors, are an actor in Afghanistan, and there are always political ways of mediating between various actors. Afghanistan is a civil war-torn country. It has fragmented around factional and ethnic lines, and Taliban become this core group within many other groups. And I think our position today stands vindicated, because now the whole international community is talking about negotiations with the Taliban moving forward. So I think we have a principled stand on that.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. But Major Raja Mujtaba, you mentioned that the Americans were arrogant. But the important thing is that the Americans need it. They need us badly, because they have to not only extricate themselves, they know that we can play a role using our influence with the certain pressure groups which are over there. Not that they are allies, but we have had traditional relations. But on the other hand, Pakistan's hospitality has been abused as far as supporting the Americans are concerned. If you read that book, The President's Secret Wars, it talks about the CIA agents being positioned in Pakistan in the garb of the reconstruction and rehabilitation workers just after the 2005
Earthquakes, yes.
Raymond Davis affair, and then Salala, OBL, all these things point out towards an abuse of our hospitality.
You see, one thing that we have learned, and we must take lesson from it, that Americans are friends to nobody. They are friends to their interest only. If it comes to killing somebody who has been their ally, they will not hesitate to do so. Number two, today America, the cards are being called from Tel Aviv and not from Washington. Keep that also in mind. So the entire this 9/11 episode and all that which developed was basically all came up from Tel Aviv and not from Washington, and Washington was dragged into it. If you notice take a note of the Netanyahu's latest statement that if you don't support me on Iran, I can sway away 80% of your votes. So what is that? That is arm twisting of the American president elections, you know. So we must keep all these things in mind when we are on a much broader canvas. Today, the Salala thing that they did, because that has become a major turning point after Raymond Davis. Daily Telegraph reported that this is a suicide that Americans have committed by attacking Salala. The immediate response was to closure of the NATO routes. And the cost that they have paid, now they are well aware of that. And since Pakistan became firm, the Pakistan army took a stand, then Pakistan government.
नाज़रीन आप
It's being swayed about the murder of 16 Afghans in Kandahar. Believe me, it's just a blip for a little short time. It doesn't really figure in a major way there.
Actually, I read an article only the other day in the Wall Street Journal which says that Afghanistan may cost President Obama the elections.
I have my disagreement over
Anyway,
it. But
what's
yeah.
your opinion, sir?
You see, Obama came with the promise of change. And the change was, first was to close the Guantanamo Bay prison, which he has failed. Then it was the withdrawal of the troops from the war, no wars, even that he has failed. And now he's trying hurriedly that he must be able to retrieve his image. And that retrieval is being hampered or being resisted by Tel Aviv very powerfully. But Obama has to, if he cannot bring this change, so then it means he has lost his face and he will be finding it very difficult to contest the coming elections. Killing of 16 Afghan civilians in Afghanistan, to us, it means a lot. Yeah, to us, it means a lot. Burning of the Holy Qurans, to us, it means a lot. Burning of the Quran united the Muslim sentiment, not only in Afghanistan, but all around the world, you know. Killing of those 16 soldiers, that brought in sort of
16 civilians.
16 civilians, that brought in sort of a blood unity within the Afghan tribes, you know. Because if they are killed, somebody else is also being killed and things like that. And it all is happening, and now these things which are happening, which is happening beyond the control of American thinking, you know, they are happening. And the Americans, by and large, the population has been under the pressure of economic depression, you know. They are more concerned about the economy, and then they link that economy with the wars going on in Afghanistan or Iraq or elsewhere or things like that. Then they become as the tangents, you know, into that. And what happens is when they try to link that Afghanistan, because now the Occupy Wall Street, what was that? And that they raised all sort of placards, no war, no this, no that, and throw out the 1%, let the 99% come in. So these are all the effects which have taken shape, a major shape in the shape of Occupy Wall Street. So eventually, American public, which is more by and large, I agree with Simbal Khan that they are not much aware of it. If they are made aware, they will feel concerned. But they are not being made aware because CNN what tells there is different, Fox News what tells there is different, what they go to the international audience is different.
The main viewership is Fox News is the biggest viewed, and how much of the coverage and the spin that they put on everything. I mean, yes. I don't think the American public is quite insulated from the view of the world. And the other thing, just to come back to this issue about the killings in Kandahar, the murder of the civilians, even with a lot of reports that are coming out now and interviews that are coming out, even for the Afghans, you know, it's shocking to us that a soldier went there and killed these people in cold blood. But for the Afghans, it is so related to the night raids, the night raids issue that has been going on. So many times these people are going in almost daily, about, I think, 500 or 600, times a month or something. They're going into homes and kicking doors open, and so many of the innocent people get killed. For them, it's a daily issue. And it has not had the same impact, believe me, as the Quran burning had. And, you know, although the world was expecting expecting that the impact of this killings by this lone soldier would have a bigger impact. It hasn't, because people in Afghanistan are used to facing this on a daily basis. Every night, late night, early morning hours is the time when U.S. Special Forces soldiers kick doors open, there are women and children there, and so many times people are surprised and they get shot at that point. So for them it's a daily occurrence. So you have to see it in that perspective, but I agree with you, things are not good on the ground in Afghanistan. I think that is an opinion even in the U.S., generally even in D.C., even in the U.S. military. The general opinion is that the environment in Afghanistan is just not looking positive in any aspect.
Right. And you just mentioned Guantanamo, but look at this aspect that a couple of Afghan leaders, Taliban leaders, are being set free from Guantanamo directly to go to Doha for the peace talks.
You see, these are something which one must understand, because in all those prisoners, they had about 600, so there was not a single prisoner was charged for any conduct of any crime, you know. So they had taken them there. They wanted to break them. They wanted to make them part of their game. Some were relaunched via Afghanistan into Pakistan, which became in the shape of TTP then, and things like that. Now, these two gentlemen, those who have been released from there, they have been brought to Qatar. I'm sure they must have been brainwashed to the extent that they are going to support the American, facilitate the American withdrawal or formation of some sort of face-saving government in Afghanistan. But will those Afghans be accepted to the people back home in Afghanistan? That is the question. If they don't own them, if they don't accept what they talk over there, then that exercise will again run into futility, you know.
Right. So, Simbal, since you are a specialist on Afghanistan, how do you look at this overture of setting up or permitting the establishment of a Taliban office in Qatar?
I think this was going on quite in a systematic way for the past year, at least year and a half, these kind of discussions, the indirect contacts between the Taliban. We kept on hearing about it. There were meetings arranged by the Germans and obviously facilitated to an extent by Pakistan also. In Europe, in Germany, between the U.S. State Department people and then I think some other people in the U.S., maybe from the military or the Pentagon, directly with the Taliban. But this issue about, I think this was one of the initial demands that the Taliban themselves have put up, is the issue of the release of at least 4 or 5 people in Guantanamo Bay prison. These people that we are talking, I mean, I've read their profiles. These are some, at least 3 or 4 of them are very prominent Taliban commanders. And one of them was, I think, a commander in Herat. I think not just a commander, he was a governor in Herat in Taliban time. There is one who was a deputy foreign minister. There was one who was a deputy defense minister. Taliban, people who during the Taliban era were of prominent level, and they've been now in the prison for the past 8 or 9 years. And I think this was a demand that the Taliban had made, kind of a CBM. And now I think we've heard that finally they are being released. I don't think they have been released up till now.
No, not as yet, but it's on
the process has started. There were some issues as far as the U.S. Congress giving clearance for this, and there was some resistance within the U.S. government itself to the idea of release of these prisoners. And of course, President Karzai was not happy about the prisoners, Taliban prisoner being released to Qatar, and they were of the opinion that if they have to be released, they should be released into Afghan custody. For them, you know, for that to become a kind of a focal point for Taliban starting talks with the Karzai government directly, which you know, President Karzai was very keen with. But I think this is one Qatar process. We will see some movement forward in that process. This should not be considered the whole of the peace process, but it is an important small aspect of the process, because it means you know, direct talks between 2 combatants, which is the U.S. as well as the Taliban. So this is one angle of the whole process. And
do you think it will positively affect the forthcoming Chicago talks?
I think it is kind of you know, structured in a way, time-wise it's structured in a way to kind of feed into what is going to be decided in Chicago. It is very important that the plan that President Obama has set out, and there is a whole big element of the plan, is a political reconciliation with the Taliban, because the whole withdrawal is based partly on that there is some progress on the political reconciliation with the Taliban can be brought into a wider, stable Afghanistan structure. So I think that he has to show some progress till at least Chicago summit. We don't know if they are going to work out or if they are going to be success in the long term. But President Obama has to show success.
Right. So viewers, with that we come to the end of this debate. both our participants have concluded that yes, the Americans are making peace overtures to Pakistan, but the parliament, and they are the elected representatives of the people of Pakistan, are the correct platform for reviewing the rules of engagement. And all these inputs, taking in place the ground realities, make sure that the parliament will be able to come up with a concrete plan by which we will be able to engage with the US and NATO in future, rather than leaving things shrouded into conspiracy or tacit deals. Thank you so much, Simbal Khan. Thank you so much, Major Raja, Mujtaba. Viewers, keep sending us your comments and hope to see you next week, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.